Okay, so imagine this. Sometime around 3,000 years ago, you get into an accident and get superpowers that make you essentially a god amongst men. And things are mostly pretty cool because of it. You serve under some of the most noteworthy rulers in history, discover new continents, learn to fight for justice, and in more ways than one, aid the overall well-being of the country that you helped discover. Just don't ask about what happened to the people who are already living there. Across these thousands of years, you are given insurmountable amounts of battle knowledge and experience, while also paired with the opportunity to essentially prestige and start a new life whenever you decide you are bored of your current one. This is on top of being able to fly faster than Mach 3, having strength that has been compared to that of Omni-Man's, who, mind you, was one of Viltrum's top soldiers, and having ridiculous durability and healing, while also being, you know, immortal. And despite all of this, your greatest feats of strength and moments of aura farming can essentially just be chalked up to slaughtering actual civilians. This is essentially the life of Invincible's greatest fraud, the Immortal. Mind you, I read the entirety of Invincible over a year ago, which don't worry about it, I'll warn you when there are spoilers. But coming from the absolutely lobotomized and brain-rotten fandom that is the Jujutsu Kaisen fandom, I kinda super hate a lot of the whole fraud talk or aura talk that was present in that community and a lot of online communities. More often than not, it just kinda feels like people comparing feats that are hardly comparable practically, and typically it just kinda feels like a lot of buzzwords being thrown around for the sake of sounding smart. But with that acknowledgement out of the way, here comes the part where I am an absolute hypocrite, because the amount of times that the Immortal gets away with doing jack shit in any sort of emergency situation while still being able to retain some semblance of an authority status is absolutely mind-boggling. So you know how I mentioned that the Immortal served under some of the greatest leaders of all time and was probably responsible for a lot of history's greatest conquests? Sounds impressive, doesn't it? Wrong. Immortal is essentially just fucking around here, fighting actual fodder for the sake of fighting fodder. It would be like if I challenged one of my rivals' friends to a 1v1 when they normally just play strategist. I know they're dog shit, I know it's an unfair matchup, but goddamn do I know that it would be fun to beat their ass and prove that I'm better than them. This is essentially what the Immortal is doing, fighting actual fodder that is way below him and flexing it in his backstory like it's an actual achievement. Even if he isn't using his powers here, which by the way, he totally would. It's still lame because he's effectively fighting level 1 fodder for actual millennia, which by the way is not a trait that he ever loses. Also, I just gotta mention the fact that honestly, he should have just locked in during his time as Abraham Lincoln. I think any decent human being will tell you that slavery is in fact bad. So imagine being the Immortal during this time. You have carefully worked towards an outcome that will secure a path towards equality within the country that you are currently a leader of. Decide to reward yourself with a night out at the theater, except, oops, John Wilkes Booth. So you get shot in the head, which is not good. But fortunately for you, you cannot die. So what does he do? He pretends he died anyways. Presumably because the Immortal loves doing this shit where he pretends he needs a break more often than Mr. Glassbones, nothing good happens to me Mark Grayson over here. This man could have pulled a Reagan on steroids and effectively just mogged off being shot in the head. Like, you know how cool that would have been? Even if you were on the loser side of history, you would have had to respect it. And if he had just stuck around instead of dipping at the first possible opportunity, he could have actually made sure some of his policies went through instead of the immediate 180 that Mr. Andrew Johnson and his successors would proceed to do. So long story short, we can basically say that in the Invincible universe, the Immortal is at least partially responsible for the existence of Jim Crow laws, simply because this was just one of many instances of him deciding not to use his powers for good, or really at all. Okay, back on track. So far we have established that the Immortal is really only capable of thriving in battle against soldiers with no superpowers. But how does he fare up as an actual superhero? Well, not much better. The Immortal's first appearance in the show sees him fighting and winning, albeit alongside the Guardians of the Globe, versus the Mauler twins, which is alright. They're actually pretty strong in spite of the lower threat level they're typically associated with. Plus he throws hands with them without being decommissioned immediately, so off to a good start. He then takes down this fodder level vulture knockoff, which I will go ahead and begrudgingly count as a victory, but just know that these fodder encounters are lame as shit and really not anything to brag about. His next outing is against Omni-Man, which, do I even need to say it? He gets absolutely fodderized. Hell, the only noteworthy blows he's able to land on him are when Nolan is tied up and physically unable to fight back. As soon as he gets free, he ends the Immortal's life literally in an instant, but not before the Immortal chats some shit like he'd actually do something. A couple of episodes later, he pulls back up shouting some, "Where is Omni-Man? Where is he?" The only noteworthy thing he did in this fight was give Omni-Man some more aura in the form of his bloodshot eyes. That's it. No other real major damage despite having strength that is shown to be close to Omni-Man, as he was able to hold his own with him during their fight. Now maybe you're thinking an Immortal in another universe would fare a little better?
No,
Also, for the record, I'm not counting this grown-ass man getting with a member of the teen team as a victory. Then there's this actually hard-fought victory against the Sequids, which I guess good for you, Immortal. That being said though, he almost threw the victory immediately because of his hate boner for Mark. After this fight, he immediately turns around and tries to pull up to Alan the Goat, which, like, come on, man. And then while it was technically a victory, getting kidnapped by Doc Seismic is an absolute L for everybody involved. All of these fuckers should be embarrassed. These stupid centipede things should have been absolute fodder. And getting bailed out by Darkwing of all people is mad embarrassing. I'm counting this as an L, fuck you. Then he loses to the Mauler twins with the taser, which I know that everybody did, but getting bailed out back to back and this time by Oliver of all people, come on man, just pack it up. Then there's the biggest L in Immortal's history in my opinion, in the form of King Immortal. An immortal from a distant future rules the people of Earth with an iron fist, crushing anybody who dares to rise up against him. This is done in an attempt to provoke somebody into killing him, therefore allowing his authoritative power to be transferred to the people. Unfortunately for Immortal, killing people who are literally powerless to fight back eventually gets boring when you don't have some greater goals to work towards. So he gets all depressed and crazy and begs our Invincible to kill him. Why couldn't this Immortal have just vanished from his position of power like he's already done multiple times before one way or another? He thinks it's lame. What's even lamer is that when Mark does finally kill him, his stupid robots make an announcement about how the power has been transferred to the people. Like, are you kidding me? Imagine this lame ass old man who has been ruling for several centuries at this point, realizing that he is going crazy and that he doesn't want to do it anymore, deciding to kill a bunch of civilians in order to maybe provoke somebody into giving him an easy way out, all while programming his little robot goons to glaze him one last time after his death. Come on man, that is the absolute lamest way to go out. He's just lucky that it was Black Air Force Mark on the scene and not pre-Angstrom Levy Mark. For the sake of avoiding super spoilers, I'll only elaborate more on King Immortal later, but it doesn't take a genius to see that a lot of the Immortal's only claims to power come simply from occasions where his opponents are literally powerless. And even then, he barely gets by. Give me liberty, give me fire, give me civilians to slaughter, or I retire. Jesus Christ, man, it's fucking embarrassing. This is the part where I'm gonna speedrun his comic L's, so skip to this point if you really care. Seriously, this will super spoil the ending of season 3, and a lot of the ending of the actual series. Everybody good? Okay. Becoming a father is cool, good for him, but basically every fight that he's involved in after the King Immortal arc is a fat L for him, which is saying something because he's fucking barely in the rest of the series. Invincible War? Mouth gaped and absolutely fodderized. He gets wiped so hard that as soon as he comes back to life, he quits super hearing for good this time. Later, Robot becomes evil, and who could have seen it coming? Immortal is genuinely useless, like to the point of actively hindering the team he's on. Twice. He loses twice to the same dude. Something even crazier is that during the reboot arc, he gets a lot more of a heads up that an evil Omni-Man is going to kill them all, and instead of, doing literally anything useful, he shit talks him and goes down with one single blow, leaving the rest of the Guardians to pick up his slack. And while he does help a little in the grand scheme of the final battle, he's shown so little that I ultimately think it boils down to the fact that Kirkman simply forgot to kill him again. While we're on the topic, Immortal's fraudulentness is so bad that one of the first things Mark thinks about after killing Robot and becoming the king of the Viltrumites essentially boils down to, I guess I better keep this asshole around because even though he may have been just slap a couple filters on him and he'll make better decisions for the Immortal when I put him in charge of Earth than he's actually capable of making. It's just embarrassing, man. You have a dude who is basically put into a leader position by default every single time he is given the chance, but he can barely lead a team without them splitting apart or breaking up. And when he's given the chance to use his superpowers, it goes one of two ways. He either gets folded like an omelet faster than you could think of calling him a fraud, or he speed blitzes a bunch of powerless civilians in a desperate attempt to get himself out of the Sneeko chair and into a position of actually feeling powerful. May I remind you again that both the wikis for the show and the comics refer to him as a being on par with Omni-Man. Who are we kidding here? Does anybody actually really believe that? I bet whoever wrote those lines on the wikis were actually fucking dying of laughter. Maybe they'll attempt to do more with him later in the show's existence, but as it currently stands, Immortal is the biggest fraud in the entirety of Invincible. And it's all simply a skill issue on his behalf. Okay, anyways, thank you all for watching this far. I know this video was rather different from my normal stuff, but I've been consuming a lot of Invincible Shut the fuck up, Microsoft. But I've been consuming a lot of Invincible content recently for the sake of a bigger project I have coming up, so I just wanted to get this off my chest while it's still fresh on my mind. I also wanted to do more than one upload in a month, so here I am. In any case, thank you all very much for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe. I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.